Hello everyone, today I'm going to be making a video going over 5 tips for newer and intermediate players. Bear in mind that because these are for newer players, more advanced players are unlikely to get much out of it. With that in mind, let's hop right in. Tip 1 pertains to AA. The first tip that I'm going to go over today is the proper setup and usage of anti-aircraft weapons. In the game of Steel Division 2, there are 3 types of anti-aircraft weapons that we can choose from. These are as follows. Anti-aircraft guns. The titular units for this tab, these are your Flak 43s on the Axis and Zenart 37mm on the Allies. Really any small caliber stationary gun. These are most likely unit in your deck to actually kill an aircraft, however they do very little in the way of suppression, so while they will likely kill the plane will likely finish its bombing run before going down. Next we have dual purpose anti-air guns. These include Flak 41 88mm on the Axis, or Zenart 85s on the Allies. These are your heavy hitters, and while they pack a punch in suppression, if they are too close to the fronts, they are going to fall planes back more often than shoot them down. While this is a viable solution, I for one want to see them slam into the planet, not just run away. Lastly, we have self-propelled anti-aircraft guns, or SPAGs. These are your SDKFZ 7/1 on Axis or M15 on Allies. They often carry the same weapon as the stationary guns, however they are on wheels or treads to allow them to keep up with your pushes and protect your heavy tanks while they are on the move. Now that we have what they are, let's look at the proper ways to use them. It is worth noting that this is hardly an exhaustive list of AA guns in the game. And this is going to be mainly used in 2v2 and up games, as 1v1s typically lend themselves to little to no AA due to the amount of ground you have to cover. The best advice that I can give you is to make sure your gun line works in such a way to kill planes rather than just scare them off. This will see your SPAGs following your heavy tanks, stationary small caliber guns in forests or protected locations behind the main force, and your dual purpose guns set up about 200 to 500 meters behind the regular guns. This is because your dual purpose guns only take about 2 shots to fall a unit back, and while this is good, it hardly ever makes it into range of all the rest of your guns if you have them all at the same line. That said, you want it within 500 meters to make sure that the plane does fall back rather than dropping their bombs or other munitions. For all of these weapons, placement is key. Use your cover tracker to check sight lines, not only so the enemy doesn't get a bead on your guns, but also so that you can see planes on the way in. AA in dense forests is unlikely to see anything until it is right on top of it, and AA hidden behind a building is very unlikely to see anything except the wall of that building. The best place for them is usually on top of hills with cover from a forest, but at the edge, enough so that they can see. One of the hardest things to remember when it comes to AA is that they will fire indiscriminately at ground targets that are in range and planes alike. This is dangerous and will show off your squishy gun to the enemy gun lines. Another challenge is remembering to move your AA after it's fired. I suggest that you move your AA each time that it fires, as an experienced player is likely to only lose 1 plane before targeting the spots with artillery. Using Hunt Command to move them along the edge of the forest will ensure that they stop to fire at planes that come in range, while still moving if they aren't actively engaging nearby targets. Tip 2. Replays. Ever suffered a humiliating defeat and wondered what it was that you could have done better? Ever won your front entirely and wondered how it was so successful? The answer is to watch your replays. This is true of any competitive sport or game across the planet, but a perfect game of Steel Division has never been played. Not by me, not by anyone. Everyone makes mistakes, whether it is something as minor as unloading your infantry a smidge too early, or something as massive as assuming all their AT guns were dead only to lose your Tiger to a side armor hit from a hidden M42. Watching the replay after a game gives you the benefit of perfect hindsight and allows you to come up with ways to avoid your mistakes, while learning to recognize the enemy's mistakes. The best advice that I can give you in this regard is to always assume that you have something to learn, because, at least in my experience, you do. I still catch myself in replays doing things that I could have done loads better. And most experienced players will tell you to watch a replay, especially if you lost, just to see how. Tip number 3. Air doesn't hold ground. I quote this on a weekly basis while playing Steel Division 2. There's something of the ease of access of air that calls us to use it to cover our mistakes and to smooth holes in our defenses. The issue with this is it sets you into a cycle of having to use air to correct your mistakes over and again. After a short time, you're likely to be countered with AA and shut down entirely. Aircraft in Eugen games have always been fragile and unreliable, something that I find a boon for the franchise. They are meant to capitalize on enemy mistakes, or to fix small mistakes if you've already got units on the way. However, if your troops in the area fall, all the planes in the world aren't going to hold the flag for you. Just remember, more often than not, ground units will be more effective at winning you the game than aircraft. Aircraft is, however, a great way to help teammates once in a while, perhaps capitalize on an enemy tank that's pushed too far out of its own AA net, or even to bomb a city to stop the enemy from surrendering your entire army that's been stunned by an off-map artillery strike. Just remember, if you're thinking about bringing in air, think if you're using it to patch a hole or to add to your push. If the former, I would say skip it 9 out of 10 times. If the latter, go for it. Tip 4. Effective shot and how to manipulate your conditions for it. When selecting a tank or anti-tank unit, you have the option that appears on your command bar called Efficient Shot. The way that it works by default is that if you toggle it on, your guns or tanks will wait until they have a 40% chance to hit and a 40% chance to penetrate before opening fire. It will also fire if fired upon, regardless of these chances. These are the default values and can be edited in the gameplay menu under options. This is a great option for your lighter guns so they don't ping shots helplessly off the front armor of heavy tanks just to commit suicide. Instead, they will wait until they feel they have a chance to penetrate and take their shot. I've seen this option result in a Firefly killing 2 King Tigers before, and should be used 100% of the time on guns that you're not actively paying attention to. Tip 5. Fire on position. If I was to reference the fire on position command in Steel Division, you would likely think of artillery. And for the most part, you'd be right. That said, any unit that has an HE weapon can use this feature. Unlike artillery, most units cannot do what is called Indirect Fire, a stat listed on a unit that has its armory entry, so you can't have your tanks lob shells at 2 kilometers over trees. What you can do, however, is make up for small mistakes. Ever push up farther than you were anticipating, outrunning your recon and leaving your tanks vulnerable to guns that they can't see, let alone identify? I've done this more times than I can count. Luckily, there's a fix for this. AT guns, infantry support guns, sniper weapons, and machine guns in the game leave a little contrail that you can follow back to its aggressor. This is great for the AT guns your Russian tanks are being shot by, but can't seem to figure out where it is. Simply pin down where the shot is coming from, then use the fire on position command to take it down. The tank or other unit will begin spraying the area you targeted with anything in range, and will likely either flush out the gun that's bothering you or destroy it completely. That's going to do it for the 5 tips for newer and intermediate players today. Something that I would like to mention is I recently did a video on tank ammunition types. During this video, I said that APCR, or armor-piercing composite rigid shells, only did 1 damage. At the time this was true, but as of the Tribute to D-Day DLC, the damage of these shells has increased based on the caliber of the weapon that fires them. This is a huge buff to APCR and really makes me want to rethink how to use it. After all that though, I hope you learned something, and if you'd like to see me cover any specific content or have any specific questions, please leave it in the comments below. Thank you for watching. As a postscript to this video, I would like to throw out one bonus tip for practically everyone who plays this game, but most notably those that are experts or at least intermediate players. I know that channels such as mine, Vulcan HD Gaming, Bubblebox, and Scout Spirit, as well as many others that I'm not mentioning right now, do as much as we can as far as informing new players how to play. However, it is going to be a lot of our responsibility to make sure that everyone new to the game because of the DLC, or just picking it up off of a sale, actually learn how to play it. This will be a huge part of retaining the player base that we so seek to not do Lobby Simulator every night for several hours, while only playing 1 to 2 games. Your best bet is to take these new players, try to balance teams as much as possible, and to teach them as well as you can. At the very least, people should not be harassed for being new to the game. I see this all too often within lobbies, and it is a truly sad sight to see. If you wish to have a game filled with intermediate to expert level players, then do so and simply ask those players to leave or kick them if necessary. However, if you're allowing these people to come in and then you're going to complain about how they're doing, it's really your own fault. Try your best to help them along rather than to dissuade them from playing altogether so that we can all continue to have games in the future. Thank you for listening to this postscript and have an excellent day.